which is basically having a more of a chat and a discussion and explain few things and also talk about some of the current topical stuff in the areas of where we operate. Um, a bit about me, just to set the scene. So I'm Amindra. I'm the owner and founder of Octane Solutions. My background in TM1, as I was just talking, is I started off in finance, in accounting, and ended up implementing TM1 in a number of places. And in the last 8 years of my corporate life, I was looking after TM1 in Macquarie Group, where we took TM1. It was when I started, my job brief was we've bought a tool called TM1. Don't really know what it is, what it does. See, see where you can take it. So I go, that sounds like an exciting job. So at the peak of GFC in 2008, I took up a role in Macquarie. Uh, every every Friday drinks, we used to have 10 farewells from the team as people were getting laid off, and everyone looking at me as to who's this new guy started and what's he going to be doing. But in the 8 years that I was there, what we took was took TM1 out of the finance hand into IT, and also expanded the use of TM1. So when I left 8 years later, TM1 was used and still is being used by all of Macquarie Group in all their six divisions globally. I set up a team in India and Manila to do the development and support. Um, we also used just about all the vendors that you can think of in Australia, outside of Australia, even vendors they were not doing TM1. We tried to train them up and help us with TM1 because of the scale that we were requiring resources. So I've got a lot of experience in what are the black holes in dealing with vendors, different support models, when you require support outside of hours, when you're based in Sydney and you've got users all over the world, and how do you support your users? And on the other side of the coin is how to get the maximum out of TM1, being able to take TM1 to the next level. So we not just doing budgeting forecasting by the time I left, but it was well entrenched in group treasury, doing all the funding requirements, liquidity movements. We did all kinds of HR analytics. Uh, Unfortunate part of that was whenever there used to be a restructure, we were asked to do the modeling on which area based on the costing and where the resources are and things like that. So exciting 8 years. But then, in all my wisdom, I thought if I can do this here in Macquarie, I can probably do the same for a lot of other companies as well. So I resigned and started Octane. And 6 years on, we now Octane is a IBM Gold partner in Australia. We also have a Gold partnership in India now. We headquarters is in Sydney. We are based in the city in Sydney. We also have 4 offices in India in different places and teams in all of the 4 offices. We support clients in Dubai, India, Australia, call it Perth, but Perth is part of Australia, but in Perth as well, Fiji and US. So it's been a interesting and exciting journey. But for today's purposes, what it also means is that I bring a lot of experience in exploring different ways of running TM1, exploring different ways of managing TM1 to not only minimize the cost but also optimize the use of it. Um, One thing that we set out to do from day dot was to ensure that we have the best people in tier one. So all of our employees are fully certified tier one developers. We have a constant series of trainings and certifications that they continuously do, and we've also try and bring out new ideas into the market as we go along. One of the number of things that we brought out. So one is data fusion, which is a TM1 connector, connect TM1 into Power BI, Click and Tableau. Uh, Even though we do believe that TM1, especially in the current form of TM1, has got a really good dashboard capability, but most of the organizations that we deal with already have Power BI entrenched, and the cost of scaling Power BI is cheaper than what the IBM licensing cost of TM1 is. So instead of sort of pushing back on Power BI, what we've done is we've embraced it. So we've got probably one of our fastest growing areas is Power BI development side, and that is driven off the connector that we have that connects TM1 to Power BI. The other thing that we brought out is the different approach, different way of looking at TM1 support, looking at TM1 development, trying to minimize cost. One of the problems I faced when I was in Macquarie was in trying to scale up TM1 and using the local vendors that we had in Sydney that we were using, it was the blowout in cost was too much. I was lucky enough to be in Macquarie where it was still sort of a cost that they could bear. But for many of the mid-sized and small organizations that we now have in our client base, they probably won't have the budget to spend what Macquarie spent in scaling up tier one. And a lot of that also is experimental as well. In the early days, when you try different things, you need to pour money into it to be able to do that. We've also got a 24/7 support arm, so that's also growing very quickly, especially in the current climate where the resourcing is at a premium. We've the hours we've spent on projects is way above that 86,000 now. We support around 5,000 users globally. We've got 100 plus TM1 deployments under our belt. But the core of the matter is that always distill it down to a single thing that no matter how big or how small your TM1 setup is, your TM1 operation is, we ensure to provide the best and probably the most cost-effective way of delivering service to you. That's been our main mantra from early on. Since we've been in the market for the last 6 years, we built up a quite a good stable of clients from small operators in Sydney to some of the largest global banks. As most of you are probably aware that in the top 100 ASX and probably the top largest 500 organizations in the world, 95% of them use TM1. It's largely because of the way it scales up, largely because of the way how you're able to collect data globally, consolidate it, report it in a very succinct in a quick way. We do have upstarts like Anaplan and others that come in, which has obviously got a much larger marketing budget, so they create a lot of buzz around the product, which is good. But I can't take names, but we know of a number of sites which have implemented one of those tools and it hasn't worked out, largely because where it trips up is how it scales up. So in some of those tools, if you want to add another division, you to add multiple cubes. If you want to add another EI, you add another cube and then link all the cubes. So it just simply doesn't work that way in TM1. So the scalability factor, I think, is what, even though TM1's been around for a long, long time, it does that really well. And it really leans itself to the way accountants think and operate, which makes it really useful. So these are some of the people that we work with around the world. Coming back to what we're doing here today. So today's session is all about introducing you to the different operating models of TM1 that are out there. The text is purposefully small, so we're not going to read it all out, just give you a flavor of what we're talking about. We bucket our TM1 sites into three different categories. We call it small, so if it's under 50 users, it's not hard and fast rule. We have some clients who are only 20 users, but the way and the intensity that they use TM1 is at a very high scale, and vice versa. We've got clients which have got lots and lots of users, but they're very small touch points. So it's not a sort of a hard and fast rule, but generally clients fall into these three categories, which are small, with medium, and large. So I'll talk about the small ones. So the small ones tend to be run by finance. So finance would own the tier one operations. They would probably buy it, get a vendor to implement it, and then try to run it themselves, pull in people from finance, or maybe they'll find a Saka in IT who puts their hand up to help manage tier one, not necessarily having tier one skills, but being able to learn a few or go on a few training courses and then try to be the admin for tier one. It works, but not very well, because the level of skills is not there, plus the focus is not there. What also happens is when they need to, for example, if they're already using it for budgeting, forecasting, and due to M&A activity or some other reason, they need to build more cubes or more modeling, they either try and do it themselves, or they bring in a consultant or a vendor like us to come in and do the projects. On a day-to-day level, there's no one looking at TM1. There's no strategy around TM1. It does the job well, but there's no real spotlight on it. What tends to happen in these sites is that, yes, initial couple of years, they will have a very good ROI from their TM1 because they've replaced their Excel with TM1. But what also it means is there's a very high cost of ownership, because the ad hoc approach means two things. One is if you're pulling in people from finance, so you're pulling in a CPA, which is highly priced in the current market, and getting them to do TM1 admin. And go, that's probably not a good use of your resourcing. And the second thing happens is that that particular resource, either from IT or finance, does not necessarily have the right skill set to be able to do. You'll be able to do the basic admin aid users, roll over the months and the years and basic stuff like that. But when it comes to architecture, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to optimization of the model, it what we tend to see is that those models that built 3, 5, 10 years ago tend to just remain static and keep moving, and slowly becomes out of date, because the business is a active beast. It keeps moving, right? So if your business is static, then you're not doing it right. So you will always expand into new areas. You'll always try to grow. You'll have new products. You'll have new people and things like that. So a business is always going to be moving. It's not it never stands still. So as the business moves, a tool like TM1, which does the business reporting, the business analytics, will have to move with the business and do the what ifs and all kinds of things. So what tends to happen is that you slowly find that the ROI from your TM1 starts decreasing. And there's also very limited automation in these sites, because number one, there's no one there to automate. And if something falls over, then you end up getting pay $1,800, $2,000 a day for a consultant to come in and fix it up. And for the consultant to come in, start off, he looks at it, takes him 2 days to understand what's going on. $4,000 later, goes, this is one error that I can fix in 2 minutes. So things like that tends to happen. The other thing that tends to happen is the lack of agility. When the business wants to move, they want their reporting from TM1, or they want to do something more from TM1. There's no one, the finance or the IT guys, there's not enough skills there to be able to discuss what are the options, how they can do it. What tends to happen is after the initial ROI period, things start reverting back to Excel. Is people start dumping data back into Excel and start doing their modeling in Excel. And that again starts giving the sort of the impression that TM1's not the right tool, maybe TM1's not working. And around that period, what we find is that a new CFO might come in, or somebody else comes in and looks at it and go, shit, what are you guys doing? Like this is not how you run a business. And they'll go out, look for another tool in the market and go, oh, there's another new bright shiny tool, bring that in, go through the cycle. IBM did a research, and they found is that for this type of businesses, they will invest in a tool, use it for 3, 4 years, and then start looking, as the ROI drops, they start looking for another tool and buy. So instead of going and moving into a more automation and into a more modern phase, they tend to skid in the same place. So that's probably the category of the small business. Oh, it does not mean that 50 users is small business, but that's some how they operate. Then we move into the next category, which is something like we call it the medium-sized businesses, where they already have recognized that TM1 is the tool of choice for them. They have got investment made in them in the space. They probably also might have one or in some cases two in-house TM1 resources, either as on their permanent payroll or as a contractor. The problems they would face in trying to retain that resource and trying to ensure that the resource is trained up as well. What we tend to find is that some of these resources are really good, but they're either quite functional, really good with their functional knowledge, or really good technical, but not able to sort of dive between the two. The other problem that happens is the resources that you hire to look after your TM1 always want to do more development work, and they get bogged down in support. At the moment, we are working with a client in onboarding them to Octane Blue, where we did an exercise and looked at and observed for a month what are the tasks that your current resource do on a day-to-day basis. And what we found was 70% of her time was taken up in doing small, menial, day-to-day tasks, which does not even require someone with a consulting experience to be doing. And it was a very easy business case. And go, if we take away these tasks, the problem with them was they wanted to do a lot more projects, and they were talking to us about helping them do the projects. And go, we've got an in-house resource as well. So we started working. The in-house resource was really, really good, and they were not utilizing her well, and she was looking to move on because instead of her using her skills as a consultant, as a BA, she was being used to do menial tasks, data loads, figure out why the TIS failed, and things like that, which anyone from our support team would be able to do. Things like that. The other problem that used to happen in sites like this is there's minimal coverage around holidays or when people go on leave. There's a big hoo-ha when somebody wants to go on a leave for 4 weeks and go, it can't be over month end, it can't be over this, it can't be over budget. And when you look at the finance calendar, what it tends to happen is these guys find that they can only take leave in about 3 days in a year, and which is not sustainable for both parties. So things like that. There's no continuity in the plan. And there's no formal mechanism for after-hour support as well, as most businesses, especially now with post-COVID, things are fluid. We are working longer hours and different time zones and things like that. So the expectation is to be able to provide support to your end users when and where they work. That's become a very interesting sort of concept. So these are some of the things that we're seeing in slightly larger TM1 setups, let's say between 50 and 100 users. The other problem that these sites face is there's no dedicated or there's no sort of focus on end user support. So end users being able to, some are at a mature level, some are just at a very early stage of being able to getting into a process or a mechanism of getting the end users to raise a ticket, measuring the ticket, and also then having a sit back and looking at why they're raising a ticket. Is it a training issue? Is it something that we wrong with the model that we can fix and stuff like that? So it's sort of dwindling in the middle. Again, what we find is that by professionally approaching how you run TM1 in this mid-sized TM1 operations, you can improve the ROI of the investment that you've made in TM1. The other thing that we find is that, especially post-COVID or in the last 18 months, that the resourcing, most of these sites have lost their resources that were there looking after TM1 as the market changed significantly. What it now means is this: if you are in a mid-level size, it would be extremely hard for you to attract a resource and retain a resource for more than 2 years, You might be able to attract a resource, but after 2 years, that resource would be valued highly by other businesses. Even businesses like us, we'd be looking for people like that and pay a premium to get them onboarded. So you'll always be competing with keeping them in. And the other thing is, if the resource stays there for 5, 7 years anyway, what you will find is that the resource has become static and is not up to date with what's currently happening in the market, what's the cloud adoption, what you should do with PO, how to make the maximum use out of PECs and things like that. So that's the other downside of that. Then I'll talk about the larger business. I think in today's session, we don't have too many of the large businesses here, but this is another core area that we do a lot of work in. And these tends to be a relatively well-established tier one operation. This would almost certainly be run by IT when it gets to that scale and not no longer by finance, which also brings with it further challenges. In almost all the sites that we have, there is a big conflict between the IT priority and the finance priority, and them never being able to come to a central understanding. It's 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 just about coming to think of it in all the client sites that we have in this space, which comes with the territory. In-house team could be more than two, between 2 to 5. Obviously, in some of the large organizations that we deal in, there's teams of 50 TM1 people, which is a combination of in-house contractors and vendors like us combining to provide different layers of support, either architecture support, consulting support, or end user support. There is always going to be the application owner who runs and owns the system. And there is going to be established support structure. So you'll have a ticketing in place. You will have most of the things in place how IT runs the system. What you will find is it does slow down the system when you have all those riggers and admin around the system. You will no longer be agile, so you will have a pipeline of projects. You will have things. A simple project will take weeks or months to get number one approved and then scheduled and then done. Everything that happens in production will go through testing and things like that by right as it should. Some of these have adopted the DevOps mechanism, which has sped it up, but still it is in that phase. So those are the three operating models that we see in the market across the board. One way or the other, you will fit into one of those three. So what we've done is after having adapted the model at Macquarie that we put in, what I've done is created a sort of a product which is easy. One of the things is we have to make it easy to consume as well. So we've created a product called Octane Blue, and I'll talk about that a bit more a bit later. But what we're trying to solve with this is no matter which category you fall in, if we are able to provide you with the right level of support. So sometimes you need end user support, sometimes you need an architect to look at the strategy and things like that. So we've created one product where you go, I'll buy this, and no matter what I need, when I need, I have access to Octane to be able to do that. Be it incident, so it could be emergency support, it could be preventative, where we come in and have a look at the model on a regular basis, fix things up before it goes wrong. And the other thing is that we give you the steering wheel so you control how you use it. You've got a set piece of hours, you decide how you want to use it. What we find it does to the customer is number one, it enhances the end user support. It also practically eliminates the risk. We take all the risk on your behalf in ensuring that the model is up, and if anything goes wrong, we'll be able to solve it for you. And the third thing, which is getting more and more important now, is to reduce the cost. So we are able to do it at a price point. As I mentioned, now we've got the scale, and we've got Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, as well as 4 offices in India. So we've got the breadth and scale to be able to do it, combining our resources from both in Australia and in India, and be able to provide that service at a reduced cost. I'll explain that a bit more. So these are the three things. So it depends on what's the size and the scale of your operation. The by far the most popular version of the offering is the Octane Blue, which is a $3,900 month charge, and there's no lock-in contract. So you can buy it for a month or you can buy it for the year. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, if you buy it for a month, then it's not really giving you too much benefit. But what it gives you is 40 hours of Octane hours, and you can use Octane for anything. So we've got architects, developers, senior developers, support, and teams that run this. And regardless of what level of support or architecture help you need, just raise a ticket and we'll do it and charge you up to 40 hours. If you exceed 40 hours, we can we've got a set rate locked in, so we charge you additional hours at that rate. If you do not use the 40 hours, we also allow you to roll it over. So you can roll over the hours. So there might be like, for example, December, not all organizations are going to be using fully consuming their full 40 hours. They'll be able to use it, roll over the hours, sorry. The other cool thing about it is doesn't matter when and what, these teams operate on a 24/7 basis across the weekend, every night. And so you can get things done or get your users to raise tickets whenever they need us. So that's another beauty about it. Uh, all our services are SLA based, so depending on the type category of the ticket, they'll be generally within an hour. So we almost guarantee that within the first hour we'll be able to respond to the ticket and start looking at fixing it for you. The other thing is around the onboarding. So we've got sets of checklists. So obviously we've been doing it for more than 10 years. Octane and prior to Octane is this is what I've been doing. We've got a set of a mature checklist as to how we'll be able to onboard you, mitigate the risk, ask the right questions, understand how the model is working, and things like that. And you can use the services for anything. So you can raise a ticket for us to look at a support issue, set up a new user, whatever it may be. A lot of the sites are using the a recurring ticket. So every month do XYZ and our team will just come in and do that. So that just takes care of that problem. So Octane Blue is, as I said, the most popular one. However, for some of the smaller sites or for some organization to go, I want to test the waters a bit before I jump in. We've got a smaller package which is the 15-hour support. It'll gives you everything. The SL everything that's in the Octane Blue is in Octane Red. The only thing is that the SLA is a bit longer, so we will take a bit longer to respond, and the hours are smaller in there. So this is the key offering that we have. But what we also have is we've got a number of, as I mentioned, our clients are more skewed to the larger end of the town. And what we have is Octane Black, which is we provide a full-time dedicated FTE, which is yours for 100% of the time. And that starts from 12,000 a month, and that is a range of things. It means that you we'll work with you to identify what you require and then provide you with the right level of resourcing. It could be a support resource, it could be a dev or a DevOps or some places. So, for example, at the moment, a particular site here in Sydney, a real estate company where we're providing the architects. So they have in-house developers, we're providing the architects to be able to manage and design the new models that are doing more of a staff augmentation model here. And many of our clients, not just TM1, so we do it for Power BI, Blackline, Business Analyst, or any other tool set as well. So that's on the support or what the Octane offering is in that sense. Any questions? You forgot to mention that if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat as well, and I'd be able to pick it up and answer it. Oh, you can unmute and ask. I'm not sure how that works. If you can unmute, it should be fine. All right. So moving on. So what we've done is we've talked about the different uh, operating models that are out there in the market. We've talked about what we as Octane have brought out in the market and what's working really well in the current climate. Um, Having said that, it's what we also come across is when we present this to the clients and the different clients is the different objections we face. So this is something that marketing has asked me to use. This common objections is not a term that I normally use, but these are some of the things that people ask when we present to them as to this is what your problems are and this is what we offer as a solution. Does it meet your requirement or not? So they go, the probably the common one is, which is I don't have time to teach someone else to do my job. Um, and the only answer I can give them is that you now have become the key person risk, right, yourself. So it's 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 neither helping you to move up. So if you are a tier one developer and if you are working in an environment and you feel like that you cannot give up your work to someone else, then you have become the key person risk. And sooner or later, your organization will realize that and make moves to ensure that you no longer are the key person risk. So you might as well take the mental and do it yourself if you can, I think. And the other problem is if you don't have time to teach someone else to do your job, that means you are probably spending a lot more of your time on process and less on analytics. If you haven't had the time in the last 3 months to sit back and review and look at what where you are, where you're going, and what you're doing, it almost certainly means you're running around like a headless chicken, being really, really busy, but not really going anywhere. So I normally, because I've been running tier one teams for 15 years and worked with, and I know most of the tier one developers in our region and around, and I can have the conversation with them quite easily as to what they're doing, how they're doing it, and whether they're moving up. Because the whole idea, and I use the same thing within Octane when we hire people and go, you come in and you have to grow yourself. If you are doing the same thing that you're doing in 3 years' time, you have failed and I have failed you as well. So if that's happening, have a good thing about it. So that's probably more of a philosophical thing to talk about. Uh, the other one is that we can't risk having our data taken offshore. So this is a big thing, more so now with thanks to Optus, who's been our client, and now we didn't we didn't have anything to do with what happened there, and also Medibank. So yes, a very valid discussion to have around the data privacy at the moment. So firstly, we will be extension of your staff. So we'll be coming in and accessing your TM1 model. But what we won't be doing is taking your data out at any point. So we've got clients from recently Octane Blue, one of our clients from UK, which has joined in, and we went through the full GDRP compliance. And so what we now have is full GDRP compliance in place, which looks at every angle of data privacy. So we're fully compliant with that. One side question from James is, on the connector. I'll answer that in the end, James. So on the data privacy, there is no issue on that because we never take the data and we've got our own process in place. We also do a full onboarding background check and we've got things like key card entry and monitoring our laptops and stuff in place, which ensure that doesn't happen. Take your mind back to the list of clients that we've shown you, some of the largest banks in the world. So we've gone through the process to ensure that this is not an issue. What about turnover and Octane staff? So this again is a very valid risk. Yes, we and despite the fact how good we are. We are not perfect, so we also have staff turnover. Sometimes people do decide to leave, unfortunately. But what we have got is mechanism in place internally to ensure that when our staff leave, that the client is not exposed in any way. Like the many things that we do, but one of the easiest one I can talk about is that we've got a rotation policy where people looking after the support for a particular client would rotate within the team. So eventually, after a while, you will have multiple people within our teams that are across your model and are able to assist you. So the key person risk in Octane doesn't exist. The other one is it's cheaper for me to hire someone here. And I've been through this many, many times. It really is not. So when you look at it from a purely financial perspective, most people, surprisingly, even accountants, when they look at it, they only look at the daily rate that they might be paying or what the salary of the staff is. But when you look at the bigger picture and look at the recruitment cost, the occupancy cost, when staff leaves, the staff turnover, the cost of hiring someone else, and the training, it just simply doesn't make sense. It cost is way off when you're trying to hire and maintain a team here in Sydney. The other one is we already have another vendor who provides us with licensing, and we are happy with that. And that is fine. So as I mentioned, so when I was in Macquarie, we used all the vendors. So I'm friends with all the other vendors that look after TM1 in Sydney or in Australia, and I've got no worry. Each one of them are good in their own way. However, what we're talking about is not licensing. What we're talking about is your operating model of how you're running TM1. So this is the day-to-day run of TM1. This we do sell license, separate arm of the business. This is not affected by where you're buying your license from. Um, and you can continue to have your relationship with your existing vendor for your licensing. Doesn't affect this in any way. Uh, the other one is if I get Octane to take on my task, would I be out of a job? The answer to that is if you are managing to do 40 hours work a month and getting away with it, don't get us in because you'll get exposed. In that case, just keep quiet and enjoy because um, that's something that's more of a joke, but that we've seen that happen a few times where I go, if I get you guys in, won't you be taking away my job? But the conceptual difference in that thinking is that we're not there to take over your job. What we're there to do is take the lower part of your job to free you up to do more things, better things. So we normally would be freeing up 40 hours a month for you to do. One of the problems I find, especially with TM1, is people or our Tiaman community tends to hold on to things and really work with what they have and what they're doing and really get into it, and it stops them from looking at selling TM1. One of the problems we face is that when TM1 is in an organization, there's not enough people looking at how we're running TM1 within the organization. Are we getting the users together, doing the user training? Are we treating or operating TM1 professionally? Are we training up the users? Are we talking to our stakeholders on a regular basis to ensure that they're using TM1, maximizing the potential of TM1 in all different areas? Let us do all the manual task of data loads and TIs falling over and reconciliations and user setup security. That's not value add. We can do that. What we want you to be doing is focusing on the more high value task. That's where your value comes into play. Uh, all right, so we'll move on. So James, I'll answer your slide. So the question is on the connector that I talked about earlier. Is it something that Octane has developed, or is it an IBM based product? It's something which Octane. So connector we're talking about is Data Fusion. That's something that we as Octane have developed, and that's being used by when you need to uh, display TM1 data out into Power BI. All it does is it's a very elegant solution to connecting TM1 to Power BI in real time and being able to refresh your Power BI reports in real time instead of dropping TM1 data into CSV, uploading into Power BI, and then always having the issue of, oh shit, my TM1 and my Power BI is out of sync because the data is from last night, or somebody's forgot to add a new element into the reports. All that kind of thing goes away by having data fusion in place, and it's something that we built and we sell it separately. So what's been the feedback? So this is something, obviously we're, apart from being a traditional TM1 vendor, this is something that we've been doing for a while, and it's probably a bit too small there, but you can check us out. So we've received a number of feedback on the product, on the services that I've been especially talking about today, on both on Google reviews and Trustpilot. So feel free to check it out. If you've been working in this space, you probably know that it's extremely difficult or extremely rare for people to drop reviews. So we're actually quite happy and proud to have this here. All right. Just up to the end of the presentation. So I just reiterate. So we as Octane, there's certain things that we do around TM1. So first is the training. So we've got a very comprehensive training. We've got $99 training that we sell on PO and PEX, which is quite popular. The other thing that we talked about already today is the resourcing. So we've got teams of TM1 resources where we provide the development and support for your TM1. Of that resources bit, we today only focused mainly on the Octane Blue, of which is probably by far the most popular thing that we have in the market at the moment. So that's what something a lot of people wanted to understand what it does, how it works, and that's why we're doing this today. We also come in and do the project. So regardless of the Octane Blue, if you probably don't think it's a right fit for you, we come in and do the projects as well for you in TM1. The other thing, which is maybe another discussion for another day, is where we come in and do a flight check, which is like a health check on your TM1 to give you not just the technical side of it, but also the functional side of it as to whether you're using TM1 to the maximum potential or not. Are you on the right version? Are you using it well, and all that kind of thing? That requires not just a technical eye to it, but also a functional eye of being able to say, have you considered using TM1 in group finance where everyone's living in Excel hell and things like that? So that's something that we do on a fairly regular basis. All right. I've come to the end of my presentation proper. Um,